जी हाय बच्चों, होप सब ठीक होंगे. You will all will be fine. So let's start from the previous lecture, overhead cost. And in the overhead cost, we studied that all the indirect cost, either that is indirect material, indirect labor, or indirect expenses, so that will be called overhead cost. Now overhead cost, that is classified on the basis of their qualities into main categories: functional and behavioral. So functionally, overhead, that is divided into three categories. First one is factory overhead, second one is office and administrative overhead, third one is selling and distribution overhead. Factory overhead. So factory overhead, it includes all the indirect cost incurred for the operations of manufacturing or production divisions in the factory. Means that all those indirect costs which taken place in the factory in manufacturing process. So all the indirect cost, that is called factory overhead. Indirect cost of the factory. Factory overhead means indirect cost of the factory. For example, the grease that are used in the machinery, the mobile, the oils, the lubricants, the paints, so that these are used in the factory, in machinery. That is in category of indirect materials. Similarly, the factory supervisor, superintendent, the manager's salary, that is indirect labor cost or indirect wages. The rent of the factory, insurance of the factory, electricity bill, light and heat powers. Similarly, the depreciations of the machinery and factory, these are indirect expenses. So combinedly, these indirect material, indirect labor, and indirect expenses, this is called, which take place in the factory, that is called factory overhead cost. Office and administrative overhead. Office and administrative overhead, this is also a type of the indirect cost. So it is the total of all the indirect cost of the general office. It includes the cost of formulating the policy, directing the organizations, and controlling the operations of the undertaking. For example, office, printing, stationaries, these are words. These are the indirect materials cost. Similarly, salary of the office manager, of the directors, of the controllers. This is the examples of the indirect labors. Rent, insurance of the office building. Similarly, depreciations, electricity bill of the office. These are the example of the indirect expenses. So these indirect expenses are called what? These are called office and administrative overhead. Third one is some indirect expenses occurs in the showrooms, like that is in the selling and distribution stage. So these are called selling and distribution overhead. Dear students, selling is something and distribution is something. So selling overhead is the cost of seeking to create and stimulate demands. We want to create or to increase the demands, and of securing of the order that for the selling. We are getting the orders of the finished goods, while distributing or distribution overhead or the that is operations that is incurred in the process, which begins with the making the packed products available for the dispatch. It means the delivery into the markets. So delivering charges, etc. These are indirect expenses. Like interval used in the sample of the finished goods, stationaries, packaging. These are words. These are the examples of the indirect material of the selling and distribution. Similarly, the commissions to the salesmen are the salaries of the salesmen. That is the examples of the indirect labor overhead cost of the selling and distribution. Similarly, rent, insurance, electricity, telephone bills. These are the example of the indirect expenses of the selling and distribution overhead. Hope you will understand that overhead is further divided into three categories: factory overhead, office and administrative overhead, selling and distribution overhead, which I explain in details according to the functions. Similarly, according to the behavior. So behavior, we have fixed overhead, variable overhead, and semi-variable overhead. Overhead cost, according to, here I explain these things as well as, but look at overhead cost according to the behavior, fixed overhead. So these are those indirect costs which are fixed in nature for some specific period of time, that is unchangeable. For example, rent of the factory, so that will be fixed for a fixed period of time. It doesn't mean that in 1 month we pay the 3,000 or 4,000 rent of the factory, then the next month we paid 5,000, the next month 2,000, then 7,000. No, rent will be fixed for some fixed period of time. Then after that will be changed, and then that will be fixed. Similarly, salaries of the managers. So that is fixed overhead. That is fixed for some fixed period of time. It doesn't mean that in 1 month you are getting $1,000 salary, in the next month you are getting $1,200 salary, then you getting $700, then you are getting $1,500 and so on. No. Salary, that should be fixed for some fixed specified period of time. So fixed overhead costs are those costs which are fixed for some specific period of time, that is unchangeable, that will remain constant for some period of time. So those costs are called fixed overhead cost, fixed indirect cost, like rent of the factory, salaries of the managers, salaries of the supervisors, and so on. Variable overhead or variable indirect cost. So variable overheads are those costs which are changing, which are varying. Time to time they are changing. For example, electricity bills of the production unit. Number of hours productions, when they are increasing, so we are paying extra to the laborers. Similarly, purchasing of the raw materials. Sometimes we purchase less raw material, sometimes we are purchasing more. So indirect materials, these are the examples of the variables overheads. Semi-variables overhead, as its name indicates, these are also called semi-fixed overhead or semi-variables overheads. So these are, sometimes they are fixed up to some period of time, and they also have the variables natures. For example, the telephone bill. So the line rent is fixed and the consumptions per unit charges, that are variables. So this type of the cost, that is called what? That is called semi-variable cost. So semi-variables overhead cost are all those indirect costs which have both the quality of the fixed and variables. They are fixed up to some period of time, up to some quantity they are fixed, and after that they are varying. So these was the behavioral wise analysis of the overhead cost. Hope you will understand, inshallah. Keep in mind that, dear students, that fixed cost will remain fixed in the total. There will be no change, while variable cost will fixed per unit, and in total that will be change. Semi-variables, that is variable per unit as well as variable in total. How? I can explain these things with an example. Look at, we have a unit of 1 pen, 10 pen, 100 pen, 500 pen. Unit cost of pen is $2. Similarly, that is fixed. So what will be the total cost? Total cost is per unit cost multiplied by number of units. So these are the units. Let's suppose units. Now total cost is 1 multiplied by 2 is equals to 2. Here the 10 pen cost is 10 multiplied by 2 is equals to 20. The 100 pen, so 1 pen is on $2 cost. So the 100 pen cost is 2 multiplied by 100 is equals to 200. 500 pen, that will be 500 multiplied by 2 is equals to 1000. Now look at, as we discussed, that fixed cost will remain fixed in the total. It means that their total cost will remain fixed, unchanged. But here if we looked out, the total cost is changed. 2, 20, 200 and 1000. While variable cost we discuss will be fixed per unit. So look at per unit cost is 2, 2, 2, 2. So what will be? It means that this is what? This shows variable cost. Cost is increasing. Clear or not clear? Per unit cost is fixed, but as the number of units are increasing, so the total cost is increasing. So this shows is what? This shows variable cost. Now look at if the cost per unit is changing and the total cost if we keep constant. I am copying this and here I paste it. Look at my total cost 5, that is remains constant. How? I am keeping constant. 500, 1, 500, 2, 500, 3 and 500 keep. If the total cost is remains same, so cost per unit will be changed. Look at here, total cost is 5 and unit is 1 pen. So the 1 unit cost is how much? 500. 500 divided by 1 is equal to 500. Now the total cost is 5, but the number of units are increased to 10. So 500 divided by 10 is equals to 50. Clear? Now we further increase the numbers of 10. So 100 now and total cost is 5. So per unit cost is further decrease. 500 divided by 100, so is equals to 5. Now 500 pence and their total cost is 500. So what will be the cost of 1 unit? So 500 divided by 5 is equals to 1. Look at now in this second situation, the total cost is remains constant if we keep remain constant. So per unit cost is a change. So what does it mean? It shows what? It shows the fixed cost. Why? Fixed cost will remain fixed as a total. Look at as a total. And will remain variable in per unit. While variable cost remain constant per unit and vary in total. Here fixed cost remain constant is total and vary per unit. If you not understand, I give you another example. Look it. I am teaching you. There is one student and I hire a room, a classroom, and make payment of 1,000 per month. So if I take 1,000 from a single student, so I will pay this 1,000 full to as a rent. But let's suppose if the number of the students are increased to 500, to 5 students, and I want to divide per students rent charges. Now I divide 1,000 on these 5 students. So per student cost is now 200. Cost is decrease. So that's why, look at, rent is fixed 1,000. But when the number of the students are increasing, so per unit cost is decreasing. You got my point? So this is what's fixed cost. Now, semi-variable cost. So semi-variable cost is changeable in total as well as changeable in per unit. How? Look it. I'm again copying this. If my total cost is here, $2,000, let's suppose. How much? 2,000. Here my total cost is 4,000. Here my total cost is 6,000. And here my total cost is 20,000, let's suppose. Now, oops. Now look it. Just a minute. This is 20,000. Now what will be per unit cost? 2,000 is the total cost of one pen. So per unit cost is 2,000. 4,000 is the cost of the 10 pen. So what will be the per unit cost? So 4,000 divided by 10. 400, that will be per unit cost. Then 6,000 is of the 100 pen cost. So what will be the per unit cost? That is 60. And now 20,000 is cost of how much pen? That is of 500 pen. So per unit cost will be 40. Look at now. This cost is neither same, neither equal in per unit, neither equal in the total. So this type of neither, what will be remarks? Neither same in total nor per unit. So this type of cost, that is called variable cost. So if graphically I show it, so let's suppose this is our unit cost. This is units, and here is total cost. Just a minute. Here is total So I will show the variable cost like this one. Here variable cost, when units are increasing, so variable cost is also increasing. This is what? That is variable cost. Fixed cost, if I show, so fixed cost will, as we define, that will remain fixed, that will remain unchanged. So when that are remain unchanged, so I will show the fixed cost like this one. So this is my fixed cost. Now the semi-variable cost we will show like this one. From here, that is fixed for some period of time, like that is fixed here. Then that is changed, increased, like here that are reached. Again that will fix for some period of time, and again that is changed. So in this way we can like this one. So this is now, this is called semi-variable cost. The graph will be just like this one. So fixed cost will remain fixed in the total, while per unit that is changed. Variable cost will variable cost will fixed per unit but varying in total. Whether semi-variable cost or semi-fixed cost, that are variable in total as well as variable in per unit. So hope you will understand these things. Inshallah, in the next class we will discuss our remaining topics. So for the now, I will take the permissions to leave the class. So have a good time.